together right here and blend, which is really incredible. And so these geographic features make this landscape of this border region really unique and incredibly diverse. It's also incredibly rugged and remote, which is one of the reasons why jaguars were able to hang on here more than in other areas. Now, I want to just zoom into Arizona and just kind of paint a picture of the fate of jaguars. So if we look at the time from 1827 to about 2019, 2020, there were more than 70 Class A records of jaguars. And so these are verified, documented locations of jaguars where there's some sort of physical documentation, whether that's a picture or a carcass. And so what I'd like for you to do is just kind of look at the pattern that's emerging. So we're going to kind of jump ahead through time in 20-year increments and just kind of notice. So they were throughout most of the state, and then they're kind of limited to about the half and further limited. And then now they're just limited to just that border region with Mexico. And so what happened? So why did their range contract at such an incredible degree? So jaguars, like most predators, were historically persecuted. They were treated with disdain and vilified. People perceived both real, but more often just perceived conflicts, particularly with the cattle industry. This is one of the last known jaguars in Texas, jaguar killed in Arizona. And so a quick timeline, we know that the last female jaguars, the last female jaguar was, maybe that's a little bit better. Hopefully you guys can see all of the screen. It's cutting off a little bit. Please let me know if it cuts off anymore. The last known female jaguar was killed in 1963. This isn't very long ago for a large predator, but they continue to periodically be killed in Arizona. One of the most pivotal points of conservation legislation that we have in the United States is the Endangered Species Act. So that took effect in 1973. And jaguars were listed as an endangered species. And so they got protection in the United States, but it was a little bit too late for them. There are very, very few jaguars left. However, they were officially listed. They were further given protection in 1997. And so, what happened? So what's for this 1997 listing? And so what happened was a male jaguar was treed by a mountain lion hunter hunting with hounds or dogs in the Palacio Mountains. And this was the first jaguar seen or verified in 10 years. And that same year, another mountain lion hunter also treed a jaguar. And so this was the first time that jaguars were documented in the state, and then also, and they were still alive. Usually when they were documented in the state, it was because someone killed them. And so that was really exciting. And so this spurred an incredible interest in research. And so jaguars have unique spot patterns, similar to how tigers have unique stripe patterns. And so this allows us to use camera traps and deploy camera traps. And that way we can identify individuals and use systems like marker capture. So in 2011, a new jaguar showed up. and we lovingly refer to him as El Jefe, which in Spanish means the boss. And he becomes a really important Jaguar because this really spurred an intense interest in us trying to document what was happening with these cats. And so deploying camera traps across southeastern Arizona. And our efforts paid off. For nearly 4 years, we documented this individual. We have hundreds of pictures of him, including pictures of him even in the snow. But in addition to camera trapping, really the tool that led to our success was we deployed another incredible research tool, and that was to use scat surveys. And to do this, we had kind of our secret tool, and that is this dog. So this is a former Border Patrol drug sniffing dog. And we have repurposed her to find Jaguar scat. So initially, we thought like humans. And so we searched where, naive humans would think Jaguars would go. Using this dog, we figured that, we really don't know what we're talking about. And the dog opened our eyes, and she taught us how Jaguars actually use the landscape. And so, we were searching in canyons. This is where mountain lions typically go. So why wouldn't a Jaguar be here? And Nikki said, no, that's not at all where we need to be searching. You need to actually get really high up on the steep slopes, kind of these like areas that you would never, ever choose to hike in. That's where the Jaguar wants to be. And so these were the locations where Jaguars were actually depositing their scat. And you can see why having a scat detection dog is so helpful. That little tiny yellow dot, that's Jaguar scat. I mean, like humans just aren't equipped to find this. I mean, we are lacking in so many senses, but Jaguars are able to do this. That's where they're choosing to go to the bathroom to deposit their scat. And so the Nikki, our scat detection dog, was able to demonstrate this. She also helped us to find other signs, including Jaguar tracks and scratches. And so once we had these, reliable detection sites determined, we shifted towards collecting videos so that we could understand their behavior better. Because we realized we knew absolutely nothing about these cats, or very, very little. And so we started setting up video cameras, and this allowed us to understand, where were these cats sleeping? How were they using the landscape? What speed were they traveling throughout the landscape? And so it just started to give us a lot more information. And we shared these videos with the world, and it went viral. Millions of people learned about El Jefe. In fact, I even got emails from some of my friends in Sumatra that said they had seen news about El Jefe, and were congratulating us. And so that was really special. Now, at the time of our involvement, at this time we only had one individual Jaguar in the entire United States, and that we knew of. And fortunately, since the last several decades, we've documented a new Jaguar every several years, like 3 to 5 years. And so this new Jaguar, another new Jaguar showed up that we call Yoko, and then another new Jaguar showed up a couple years after that. So there were several Jaguars that continued to come onto the landscape. However, we also know that Jaguars were continuing to be killed. So this is a Jaguar that was killed just south of the Arizona border in Mexico. There's still very, very high persecution pressure. They're fully protected in the United States. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of poaching that occurs for Jaguars in Mexico, which is part of the problem. So, but we do know that some of the Jaguars were going back and forth. In fact, one of the Jaguars from the United States moved back down into Mexico and was unfortunately killed, which was really sad. So it's important to think about, where are these Jaguars coming from? We hadn't documented a female in the United States since 1963. So we didn't think that there were cubs here. So the big question is, where are these cats arriving from? What's actually happening is, I'm not sure if you're able to see my cursor, but there's a source population down in Mexico, and these cats are traveling through this incredible landscape, almost like island hopping, up into the United States. And so we need to think about this area as one contiguous population that spans an international border. And this is where politics start to get pretty tricky, because in fact, some Arizona Jaguars, we knew that they were going back and forth. So it was important that Jaguars were protected on both sides of this border. But there's two major problems that are impeding the recovery of Jaguars in the United States. One is philosophical, one is physical, but both are strongly influenced by politics. So the philosophical obstacles, all recent Jaguars that we know of have been male. And so because of this, even though they're listed as endangered, according to the state and federal wildlife agencies, they are considered to be non-essential to the population. And so they're not given the protection that they warrant. And so it's also considered by most of these agencies that the habitat here is not important for the species. And because it's not tropical, it's not what we typically think of as Jaguar habitat. And so there are no active plans. There are no plans to actively restore Jaguars in the United States. And so the state and federal agencies are not putting money towards funding their recovery. So it's up to organizations, non-government organizations, to do this work. There are also tremendous geopolitical obstacles. So even if Jaguar recovery was a conservation priority, and I stress that it's not from the government, there are issues with the border. There are hundreds and hundreds of miles along the US-Mexico border that has barriers of some kind. And unfortunately, these fences and walls are continuing. And so on the landscape, even if a Jaguar does disperse, does make it from Mexico, through this incredible array of roads and mines and ranches, the chances that they arrive in the US only to find this 6-meter steel fence is incredibly great now, which is really hard. And so this border fence is a significant barrier for many species. Many species have been impacted by it. However, for humans, where there's a wall, there's a way. And humans, which is why these walls were erected in the first place, do discover ways around this. So in terms of geopolitics, there's it's presented as this need for increased border security. However, it's framed in the context of an economic and national emergency, which is grossly oversimplified. And this is problematic for both people and wildlife in this region. Now, every once in a while, there are individuals that have been demonstrated, have the potential ability to negotiate some of these barriers. However, these barriers are getting taller and taller, and this really is not the norm for these species. And these proposed barriers are, in some of these places, are just really, really devastating and would be a complete barrier to pretty much all wildlife. And there's just, unfortunately, billions of dollars that are being pumped into this. And this is deadly to all wildlife and people. It's being treated as a war zone. And segments are being erected as, they were being erected kind of throughout the Trump administration, and including, this is a national wildlife refuge. This is an area in Texas that was set aside to protect wildlife. That was the entire objective. There are so few of these little morsels of land that are set aside only for wildlife. And yet they were able to do this right through that refuge, which is really disheartening. So if the wall is finished as proposed, and this would be the end of jaguar recovery in the United States, and this is a fate that we argue is absolutely unacceptable. Fortunately, it has been suspended currently in most places by the Biden administration. But it's always a constant fear that it could pick up depending on kind of politics and future politics. So what does the future look like for jaguars in America? Politics aside, what do cats need? Food, water, space. And based on topography, remoteness, prey availability, habitat fortunately exists at a large scale for jaguars in Arizona and New Mexico. And perhaps there's even more habitat than there ever was historically. And so this is what Jaguar Habitat looks like on the ground. It's very rugged. And in the United States, there's been decades of fire suppression. So historically, a lot of these areas were grasslands that would burn periodically. And so by overgrazing from cattle and preventing these fires, it's led to really thick brush encroachment. And this is beneficial for a lot of species, including jaguars and ocelots. Their smaller cousin who shares similar fate. It's also really important to note that many neotropical species or tropical species have also been expanding their range northward. And this is probably a response to climate shifts. In the face of climate change, a lot of species are expanding their ranges. And some of these are very important prey species for jaguars, including these skunks, coatis, and peccaries. It kind of looks like a pig, but it's not. And in southern Arizona, this is one of the few places, in fact, the first place where it was ever documented where a jaguar ate a bear. And when we made this discovery, it got us a future cover spot on the Smithsonian Magazine, which was really rewarding for us. Because you just don't think of jaguars eating large animals like bears. Although they are known to eat tapirs, which your professor studies, so in South America, so pretty fascinating. So can these cats be saved? So biologically, yes. And it's important to note that individuals at these geographic boundaries often have unique genotypes. And so they could potentially hold the key to saving this species in the future. In the face of climate change, we don't know what the world's going to look like in 100 or 200 years and what jaguars are going to need. And these adaptable cats in the north might be the key to their future recovery. And so we also argue that we have a moral obligation to save our only big cat, our only roaring cat in America. And if the US, with all of our resources, can't save an endangered species that's as unique and charismatic as the jaguar, what hope do we have for other species that aren't as charismatic? And how can we ask other countries to save jaguars and to save their endangered species if we aren't willing to save our endangered species. And so while our conservation efforts focus heavily on field work, and that's primarily what we are involved with, our work extends into the realm of advocacy, education, and outreach on both sides of the border. And there's some incredible organizations that we partner with that do this down in Mexico. And because we can't solve these issues without developing deep relationships on both sides. And this is such a complex issue. And so much of what we do is try to also educate and inform and share just why these cats are important. And that's something that I think each of us needs to do as conservationists, is really share why wildlife is so important, why everyone on this planet needs to care. And this work helped us to prevent this incredibly beautiful mountain range from being destroyed and turned into one of the largest open pit copper mines in the United States, in all of North America. And so this research was able to help collaboratively fight to protect these areas, to protect this mountain range. And fortunately, this has not yet happened on this landscape. It's been suspended, which is a huge conservation win. So jaguar recovery in Arizona is 100% feasible if we prioritize it. This is one of the few endangered species in the world that would cost, essentially there'd be no cost to recover it. There's no financial investment. They naturally belong here, and they were naturally recovering themselves. All we have to do is just not get in the way and maintain habitat and corridors with these populations down in Mexico. And if we can do that and prioritize that, we will once again see cubs walking on US soil again. So there's this tremendous transdisciplinary research need. How can our southern national border be managed for the best interests of both humans and wildlife? And this is a really big, huge question. And we need to find solutions that prevent competing interests from being mutually exclusive. What we need is collaborative and transdisciplinary approach to this important conservation issue. And as we all know, that's incredibly difficult, but not impossible. So, this landscape is just too important not to invest everything we can in saving it. And so I want to kind of leave you with one of my favorite videos of El Jefe and this jaguar kind of walking away. And I think of him kind of walking away into an uncertain future. And I think about what is the future of big cats in the world going to be? And how do we make that future brighter? And so with that, I will take any questions that you might have. And that's also, please feel free to visit our website. There's lots of information there. And feel free to email me if you'd like. And I'm hoping that we can have, there's ample time for questions and to have some conversations. Because, I think, I'd love to ask this question and kind of see what you see as parallels from this project to some of the incredible big cats you have in Sumatra, including your tiger and also spotted leopards. Because I think there's so much that we need to start sharing with each other and to help each one of us really maximize and achieve our conservation goals for these incredible big cats, because they're worth it, and we need to do everything we can to protect them. So, yeah. So I'd love to take some questions if anyone has any.
Okay.
If there's anything I can clarify.
Okay, thank you very much, Aletris. Yeah, very nice talk and presentation. We got a presentation about what already done and what will the future of the Jaguar. So many things is very interesting. And now we open to all of discussion, so no need to form our discussion, and everyone is invited to raise your hand and then give a question or comments to Aletris, or type in the chat column if you want to give the comment or question using the chat. And now here in this meeting, we already in this room also Dr. Wilson Novarino, our head of department. Pak Wilson. Hello, Pak Wilson. Hello. Hello. I cannot hear your voice.
Oh, sorry, are you talking to me?
No, I'm requesting our department or Dr. Wilson Novarino.
Okay.
So it's his connection is not so good. Okay. Any question or comment for Aletris? Aletris, from me. So I'm really interested in on using dogs to find Jaguar. So is it for only one individual dog you already success to train the dog, or it's kind of I mean many dogs can able to do that?
That's a great question. And you know, dream of ours is to one day have a collaborative research project with Wilson. So so that's, you know, a long-term dream of ours, and to use dogs to find scat of these elusive cats in Sumatra. And so really any dog has the potential to be used. And I think some of those like the street dogs that we saw in Sumatra, they're really intelligent, you know, and have been able to survive on their own. I think that those would make actually great scat detection dogs. What you need is a dog that is just really, really, really motivated and driven. So it's not the type of dog you want as a pet. It's the type of dog that if you left in your house would tear everything up. And so these are dogs that we keep in a kennel, and we train them, you know, specifically to find them. And they have to be really driven, really motivated, and kind of that dog that just always wants to go and go, you know, and it's really crazy, because we need to know that when we start a survey with that dog, that it's going to work consistently the first 10 minutes as it is the next hour. And so, so we need these dogs that are very high energy. And so, you know, it doesn't take a specific breed. The dog that we use is a specific breed. She was bred to, she comes from a long lineage of like drug sniffing dogs from Germany. The US Border Patrol bought her. She was very afraid to work And she just didn't work for them. They wanted her to go into a big truck and search for drugs, and she wouldn't do it. She would just kind of cower, and she was so afraid. And so Chris formed a really tight relationship with her. So she flunked out. She was only a year old, and she flunked out. But she was trained. She had this great nose. She could find, dozens of drugs, and she could find bomb materials. And so he just reprogrammed her completely to find only Jaguar and Ocelot scat. That was it. And so we had to train her to not find bobcat and puma, other carnivore, other cat scat, because they're much more common. And so, it was a learning process. And we use a very different technique because we knew there was a chance she could work a year and never find a scat. There's one cat in the entire United States. It could go an entire mountain range in one day, and it might poop once that entire time. So trying to find it was almost impossible. And so, we thought that it might not, we might not ever find one. And so we trained her, very different method than a lot of the conservation working dogs use. And it paid off. She taught us more about jaguars in a few years than we've learned about jaguars in the last 100 years. She's, absolutely incredible resource. And so, I really have this dream of trying to use that to unlock some of the mysteries about clouded leopards, particularly. That's my absolute favorite cat in Sumatra, and also to try to help us understand the Sumatran tiger as well. But really what it takes is a very driven dog, very consistent training, and then this very tight relationship between that dog and their handler. Because the dog and their handler, they have this entire language. And so just by how the dog would react, we could tell if it was mountain lion poop, fox poop, skunk poop, jaguar poop. She had this entire language for us that we, never, ever would have understood without her. So they really are an incredible tool, but it's a huge investment. And so you need to make sure that you have a project that's going to, happen for years, because it might take a full year just to train them before you ever start working in the field. So that's a great question, a really great question.
In total, how many individuals you already trained this dog?
So we just currently, we are training our second dog. And so we were fortunate. Our first dog was able to work for a very long time. In fact, she's, reluctantly retired now. And so we're in the process of training another dog to do this. But, like each project ideally would have kind of their own dog trained on that specific project. So, but on Jaguars, we're just training our second.
Is there any document or paper explaining about dog training to find a good jaguar?
There, if you're interested in this, I would love to talk with you more about it. There are lots of documents on kind of other methods for training dogs that other conservationists use. Some of those methods I think work okay when you have a species that's really abundant. The problem is that if the dog is working just for a reward, like if it's working just for a treat or to play, dogs are a lot smarter than people. And so if it wants a treat and there's no scat, it's going to try to trick you. And it might say, okay, well, this is scat. Maybe it's scat from a different species. But if you can't tell the difference, then the dog now is getting rewarded. And so there's been a lot of projects that have had failure using scat detection dogs because just because of the systems that they've used to train the dogs. And so, it's not this magical tool. It really does take kind of the perfect dog with the perfect person. And if you get that together, then it is unstoppable. But that's a hard combination to come up with.
Yeah, because here in West Sumatra, we have a culture, pig hunting festival. So up to 100 or sometimes more dogs come to the forest to hunt pigs. So yeah, I think just my mind. Maybe one of the dogs can be trained to find scat of tiger, because pig hunting in West Sumatra is one of common festival. Some of village has every week or every month festival of pig hunting. So pig hunting is using dogs actually. So that's that's maybe if we get more documentation or how to train the dog to find jaguar, maybe we can apply such condition in Indonesia. That's my thinking.
No, it's a great idea. It really is, and I think it would be really beneficial to have a dog there. And you don't necessarily want a dog that's focused just on the person and not trying to kill something. So hunting dogs can be problematic. Sometimes it depends on the dog, but often I think those really smart kind of street dogs that are really, really smart, but also want to please a person, I think those, that's probably where I would start looking. Trying to find a really young, kind of smart, like street savvy dog. I think that would be a dog that could potentially become a really good jaguar or tiger, big cat detection dog. But I'd love to have these conversations with anyone who's interested, and to help as much as possible. That's a great idea.
Okay, any questions or comment from all of attendants here? Pak Rizaldi, do you have a question or comments?
Hello, Pak Adrian. Hello, Aletris.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm Rizaldi from Andalas University. So I just want to ask you a very simple question about what we can learn from the studying jaguar that we can apply in Sumatra. So we have a different habitat and we have a different species also. So what we can apply in the Sumatra situation. So this is my question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that there are a lot of similarities in that, we all know that apex predators like big cats, these Panthera cats, are incredibly important to the landscape. We now know through research that, just having apex predators like tigers and jaguars prevents spread, helps maintain the integrity of the entire ecosystem and can help prevent the spread of invasive species. It can help lessen the impacts even of climate change by simply having these animals there. And so I think that one of the big lessons that we need to take away from this is how important we are. Just so naive as humans that, we think, well, what importance is having one tiger or a couple tigers in this mountain range, or, a couple jaguars in this mountain range? But we don't know. We're not thinking like the mountains. We're thinking like humans. And so, there are so many benefits to having just these few individuals there that we need to fight to maintain them. And I think, when I was at your incredible university, there was a tiger that lived, in the forest behind the university. And I still think of how special that is. I mean, you might be the only university in the world that had a tiger that I'm aware of, and how incredible. I mean, that's just like, I just fell in love. I was like, wow, this is where I want to go to school. There's a tiger here. And just if we could all kind of wrap our brains around the fact that we need these predators to benefit selfishly just society, to benefit, having clean air, clean water, diversity of species, plants and animals that could hold the key to the next pandemic in the future. And so, people love to say, well, this one animal isn't important. This one tiger, this one jaguar isn't important. We can be okay without them. We don't need to protect it. There's more tigers other places. There's more jaguars other places. But that's not true. And we need to stop thinking that way. And so I think the greatest lesson that hopefully people can take away from this is that every individual is important. And we really need to fight to protect these species. And if we can't save tigers and we can't save jaguars, we're not going to be able to save anything. And so, I think that's the lesson I hope people take away from this.
Okay, yeah, I think this point is really, really important because in Sumatra, in case of Sumatra, we pay much attention to the tiger. So this is the tiger still having the flag. So yeah, the flagging species. We don't pay much attention to the kind of small cats and others. So I think, yeah, I agree with you. This is a very important lesson that we need to take care of all of the species, especially for the top predator kind of cat, small and big cat. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Rizaldi. Any question or comment from other attendants? Just raise your hands or type your question or comment in chat columns. Aletris, I has another question because Jaguar previously we can say disappear from United States and then come back to United States again. So is there any difference impact to the other? Because you said that the top predator has a great impact to the below animal below of their status. And is there any impact compare a previous condition that there is without Jaguar and now Jaguar has already there? Is there any such difference condition?
That is such a great question. And I wish we had that information in those data, and we don't. Historically, this area had a suite of apex predators. We had grizzly bears, we had wolves, we had jaguars, mountain lions, all living in this area together. And we've made, I think that, a lot of these kind of developed countries have this mindset that we need to take over, and just eradicate predators and, eradicate, traditionally that coincided with getting rid of, Native peoples as well, or Native Americans. So they got rid of the Native Americans, they got rid of the predators to tame this country. And so we effectively got rid of wolves through a lot of the states. We've invested millions and millions and millions of dollars into bringing them back because we realized they were important. We realized it was a mistake. And so this is another predator that, would actually save us money to protect. I mean, there's billions of dollars being put into the border wall. We would save money if we just protected the landscape for jaguars. We would save all this money. We could put it towards, conservation. We could put it towards health for the world during this pandemic. And so this is a species that is naturally recolonizing, taking back the land that was its historic range. We just have to not stand in its way. And I think that we know from case studies where they've reintroduced wolves, that that has this ripple effect. From all these trophic cascade case studies where they've looked at reintroductions of carnivores all around the world, that influences everything from the large ungulates from their prey species, deer, and elk in cases further north, to that influencing even the water and fish and the diversity of butterflies and flowering plants and trees. So, it's hard to say what we could have potentially lost in the United States just from eradicating these predators. I think it's impossible to say, and unfortunately, we'll probably never know the answers to that. Fortunately, we have kind of had this slow, kind of occurrence of jaguars kind of naturally coming back that I'm hoping we didn't lose too much of that permanently. And that, just this recovery of jaguars could happen themselves. And I remember when we talked about this in Sumatra in 2015, we had this really brilliant student raise her hand, and she said, well, why don't you just reintroduce some jaguars? Why don't you just get some jaguars from Mexico and bring them into the United States, and then you're done? And I was like, okay, we need to put you in politics, because this is, it's such an obvious answer, such an obvious solution to people. But it's not a priority here to do that. And so unfortunately, it's not yet something that's being considered. But I mean, this is a species that we could bring a few individuals over and recover in a week's time. We could save this species if it was a priority for us. Unfortunately, it's not. And that type of restoring and translocating species that gets very, very, very expensive and is very difficult from a conservation perspective long term, that's what we're going to have to do if we continue to erect these barriers. And if we don't actually probably remove some of these barriers strategically in some of these places, not only for jaguars, but we might have to do that for a whole suite of species. I mean, as we all know, fences and barriers are the absolute downfall to genetic diversity. I mean, we can't isolate these species. We all know that as conservationists. And so we have to just start thinking smarter long term about conservation of many of these species. So, great question.
Why I asked the question, because we here sometimes we got similar questions, so we need scientific based answer, because when someone asking us why we need to protect tigers and what happens if tiger disappear, just we make answer based on the ecological logical way. But if there is some proof or scientific based sample, so it's kind of, we can say, well, look at to American, and when the jaguar disappeared, something happened, and then so that's why I asked this question, because we need to the strong answer to the question. Okay. Any other question or comments from other attendants here? At this meeting, I saw some attendance of our guest lecture now is tiger researcher. For example, Dr. Dewi Rosma, Ashraf and the Agung Nugroho. They are tiger researcher here.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome. That's very exciting.
Welcome to this guest lecture. So do you have comments? And yeah, just open your microphone or raise your hands. Ada pertanyaan Pak Dagung, Sri, Bu Dewi? Yeah, if for other student, yeah.
Yeah,
Because,
Pak, perhaps we can ask questions also from Irfan Prasetyo. Irfan Prasetyo.
Irfan Prasetyo, yeah.
Yeah, please, Irfan, if you have any comment or question based on your experience.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Rizaldi, Pak Adrian. Hello, Aletris. Nice. It was nice to see you here again. I was a committee at the time you were visited Indonesia and Sumatra at the symposium.
Yes, wonderful. Very good.
Yeah. Yes, it was nice to hear your presentation, but I have a questions. Maybe it would be similar as your maybe facing in Jaguar, but here in Indonesia we are facing such a disease pandemic, African swine fever that infect whiteboards, and it clearly affects tigers prey, and also the population of tigers it depend on the population of its prey. And do you also facing this such a threats like a disease against the jaguar or also the prey there in Arizona? Could you explain us?
Yeah, that's such that's a great question. And so I think that yes and no. We are really fortunate in that jaguars are the most generalist of all big cats. And so, I think, in different places, tigers are often closely related with, a couple, either one or, two species of, the primary prey species. Jaguars seem to eat everything. In their scat, we found everything from insects to bears in the same individual. So it seems like they do seem to really enjoy skunks, which is quite fascinating. I'm not sure if you're familiar with skunks, but they have they're very, very stinky and can spray this very foul, noxious secretion from an anal gland. And jaguars will actually eat everything but the tail part, which is really fascinating. And so we have had several diseases. There's a rabbit hemorrhagic disease that is really has wiped out a lot of the lagomorphs, so the hares and rabbits recently, and we've seen some crashes associated with that, in certain species. But we haven't had, I think because they're such a generalist species, there haven't been these crashes like there have been for tigers, or problems potentially associated with that. But it is always a concern that could happen. I think if anything, what the COVID pandemic has opened our eyes to is the fact that things can change in the blink of an eye. And so I think that this even further supports this idea that we need to be much more careful with protecting as many populations as we can, because we don't know which one is going to survive if there is such an issue as what you're dealing with now. And is that impacting kind of all throughout Sumatra, or does it seem like certain regions are more impacted than others?
So far, some spotlight is several regions identified there was African swine fever that infect whiteboards. Also, the domestic bull pig also affected by this fever. So it's such a being a big, maybe in the future being a big threat for tiger populations. So now we are with government also trying to find the best solution how to prevent this disease that because we don't want this disease also become one of the major threats for the tigers.
And that's a really good point. There is this disease that's widespread, chronic wasting disease in the United States that's impacting deer. A lot of the cervids, and so it is impacting deer, and that is having some cascading impacts on predators. But one of the issues that I see is that it's in some cases there's this direct impact where there are fewer animals, there's fewer prey, and so that's problematic for the predators directly. But there's the secondary impact where now people perceive that there are fewer prey species out there, or there are fewer prey species out there. And so now people have a lower tolerance for predators because now they're saying, okay, well, that wolf or that mountain lion or puma is a direct competition with me going out there and hunting because there's so few animals. And so now people perceive that these predators are having a greater impact on prey. When, as ecologists, we know that, they're actually doing us a service by helping to remove those sick individuals, ideally helping to prevent that disease from spreading. And so, we know that there are these benefits to having those predators selectively removing the sick and weak individuals, where as hunters, we're typically going for the strongest individuals and those trophy individuals, or at least for deer. And so we're, not directly competing with one another, but there's this perceived problem. And, a lot of the work that I do is looking at these social implications and looking at how people are perceiving these threats and how that can sometimes really lower human tolerance for these predators on the landscape. And I think that can be even more problematic than sometimes the direct impact of these diseases. And is kind of all these like secondary impacts that make humans less tolerant and, therefore,
it's interesting. Yeah.
So
that's
yes.
we also have facing in Indonesia cases.
Have you seen that there?
Yeah. So yeah, some people like okay. Especially for that hunting also being still being the activity that interesting for people, like and the major threat for hunting is using that snare. Even they talk about they say that they want to catch the wild boar, but the snares can't can choose whether the animal they will take that they will catch, right? So sometimes mostly tigers also trapped by the threats and died like that and that. So thank you, Aletris, for your kind answers.
I would love to, if you want to reach out to me, I'd love to talk with you more about this.
Thank you.
For the social aspects, really fascinating. I deal with snares aren't fortunately a problem for us. They're banned in the United States, and fortunately we have really good wildlife officers, and so there's really good wildlife management and very little poaching. But that's not the case at all in Mexico, where most of the jaguars occur. So it is a huge problem in parts of the range, and it's probably the greatest threat that I deal with in Africa, where I work. So I feel your pain. They're just awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for your work on tigers. That's really wonderful.
Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you for your answers.
I
Back to
would
you,
like
Pak
to
Adrian.
introduce Ivan is coordinator of Forum Harimau Kita is one
Not
Tiger
coordinator,
Forum.
Pak, just program assistant. Thank you,
Tiger
Pak Adrian.
Forum. We have Tiger Forum. It's called Forum Harimau Kita. Yeah, it's kind of the top people in tiger researcher, right? Community of tiger researcher join in one of the forum, and Irwan is one of the coordinator or yeah.
I am a program assistant officer.
Program assistant. Okay.
Pak,
Yeah, Pak
Pak
Riz.
Adrian, yeah, perhaps we can invite Bu Dewi to give some comment on the topic or something related with her studies about the tiger in Sumatra, about the tiger conservation and so on. Yeah, probably we can invite Bu Dewi, Dewi Imedarusma.
Hello, Bu Dewi.
And also siapa?
Agung Nugroho.
Oh yeah. So actually we have many tigers in this room.
That's great. I feel honored.
Yeah. So yeah, Aletris, perhaps we have a different situation between Arizona and Sumatra, right? And the density of human in the Sumatra is quite, especially in the habitat of the tiger or cat, something is quite high. So, and people in Sumatra really do something anthropogenic activities in the habitat of the cats. But in your situation in Arizona, for example, I think the density of people is not really big compared to the Sumatra. What do you think about that? Is there any influence on the efforts to the conservation or something?
Oh, well, we do have quite a large population. Let me see. I'm going to try to figure out how many people are in Arizona. Just gonna look up. So the population in Arizona, so we have like 7.3 million people in our state. So, pretty high population. And we have very heavy recreation and hunting and kind of use of these wild spaces. And so, I think that it's similar in some regards, and it has been a number of years since I was in Sumatra, but there were still these really lovely wild kind of pockets of land that kind of seem to serve as a source population for many of these apex predators. I think that that's very similar to Arizona, in that there's kind of these larger protected areas, and then there's kind of this matrix of areas that are in some sort of protection, but maybe more heavily utilized, or kind of smaller protected areas. And so I think what's fortunate about these apex predators like tigers or jaguars is their ability to travel these vast distances. One of the big problems that I saw when I was in Sumatra was this massive conversion of forests into kind of palm oil plantations, and I know that at least at the time there was much greater risks for tigers using these kind of open landscapes where they didn't have cover, so kind of traveling through these plantations. And so I think that's really fascinating. We don't quite have anything at that scale in as far as like massive, like kind of rapid conversion of landscapes, as what's occurring in Indonesia. But a problem that we do have here is the fact that the public land, which is kind of most of these protected areas, that ranchers are allowed to get kind of grazing rights, so they can just graze their cows, their cattle in these protected areas. And then if their cows happen to get eaten by a predator or go missing, then they often blame it on, cow just doesn't turn up, then they blame it on predators. And so that can lead to a really low tolerance of predators on the landscape. So I think that there's, there's similarities and differences, some pretty dramatic similarities and differences between, our two locations. But I think looking at it from this big picture and looking at kind of what are the similarities, like what can we learn from the incredible research that's being done in Sumatra, and share that, to try to apply that here, and then what can be learned from all the mistakes that we've made with Jaguars, and hopefully prevent some of those mistakes in Sumatra with tigers. And so, I'm hoping that, conversations like this and dialogues can, can just allow us to, expand our way of thinking about these problems and come at them from kind of new perspectives, so that we're more able to fight these incredible challenges that we have ahead of us. But good point. Yeah.
Okay, so another question. So in terms of the public education, so what did you do to educate people and to attract attention from the public so they can have some awareness about the importance of cats?
That's such a great question. And I think that, no matter how much we do, we're just not ever doing enough. So we need as many people involved in this as possible. So I think that, my personal favorite is to work with children. So we've developed a lot of curricula and information for kids. And so we're able to implement that and share that, by going into schools and being invited to places. And I think that can be really successful because kids are naturally interested. I mean, there's no kid in this entire world that isn't in love with a tiger or a jaguar. I mean, every kid on this planet is fascinated by them. And then kind of as they grow up, they might lose some of that. So if we can nurture that and they can hold on to that fascination, then the world will be a much better place in the future. But so much of the outreach that I do is really talking directly with the stakeholders, talking with people who are ranching, talking with people who are hiking, who are out on the landscape, and trying to understand, why wouldn't someone want a jaguar there? Why wouldn't someone want a tiger there? And, this is where, while I was in school, I actually went back and did, training in social sciences and applied anthropology, because I realized I was only approaching the human-wildlife conflict issue from the wildlife perspective. And I was completely missing the human perspective. And I wasn't successful because of that. And so it was really humbling to go back and start over kind of this whole new PhD and get all this training to try to understand it from the human perspective. And so I do a lot of qualitative interviews. And by doing that, I've been able to kind of get to some of the root causes on why this conflict occurs. Why are people that you would think would be supportive of conservation measures for big cats not? And so there's kind of these, once we're able to pinpoint those sources, like those reasons for animosity, then I think we're finally able to target our approach to, better conservation of these species. So I know it's kind of a meandering answer, but it's, I think, to summarize, it's working with kids. I do spend a lot of time training teachers. So teachers are much better at working with kids than I am. And so training them, letting them understand, and giving them the resources so that they can teach their classes and teach kids about these cats. And then, really focusing on stakeholders and the people that are directly impacting these cats, and trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And that takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight, but I found that to be really powerful and useful in helping me to direct my message in a way that's productive.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Aletris.
Yeah,
so just wondering about the Jaguar in Arizona. Do you have any particular kind of Jaguar Sanctuary or something?
We don't, no. We don't have any areas protected just for Jaguars. We really need to. There is a really wonderful organization, the Northern Jaguar Project, working in Mexico, and they have made a sanctuary for the northernmost breeding population of Jaguars. And so they're actively protecting land for the northernmost breeding population. And those are probably those Jaguar cubs that grow up, and those young males who don't have any more room, they're probably the cats that are coming into the United States. And so we're really very fortunate for that. And it's incredible that they are doing that. It's expanding kind of every year, which is fantastic. But we don't have specific protected areas in the United States for Jaguars. Maybe one day. That'd be fantastic. No, not yet.
Okay, thank you very much, Aletris.
Yeah.
Okay, Aletris, as far as I know, Arizona is one state in United States has local people, Indian people, and so is there any local wisdom or something related to Jaguar inside of the local people culture?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're really fortunate to work with members from most of the tribes in Arizona. In fact, we worked very closely with the Yaqui tribe, and they actually named one of our Jaguars, and we had them name it, and they named it Yoko, which means Jaguar in the Yaqui language. And we thought that Yoko. And we thought that was a really great way to highlight, in so many ways, Jaguars and, our indigenous Native Americans have a really similar history in the United States. They had this expansive range, and they were just pushed out by the government, kind of eradicated and restricted, to such an incredible degree. The Yaqui tribe, many of the tribes, the Tohono tribe as well, their range of the tribe is on both sides of the border. So these are people, they have family members in Mexico, and they, would go back and forth. And now there's this arbitrary line drawn on a map that's saying now you can't go visit your family. And that's exactly what's happening for the Jaguar. And it's really heartbreaking because, these are people that, now their family might not be able to come see them, or they can't go down to their family. And so I think, highlighting the fact that this Jaguar spans both sides of the border, these people, they span both sides of the border, that we need to think of this area at the landscape level and stop thinking about it in these little segments. In the US and Mexico, we need to think about this as this region, this border region, and try to protect it for people and wildlife in this area. And if we can do that, it will solve a lot of problems, both for wildlife and also for humanity in this region, because it's some of what's happening is just absolutely atrocious in this area, both for wildlife and also for humans that are desperate and crossing into the United States. So we just need to be better all around in how we're doing this.
Yeah, because here in Sumatra, people of Sumatra believe forest is a home of tiger. Tiger is king of the forest, and village is for human. And when tiger come to village, it seems something happen in the community. For example, the community is doing the bad thing, so that's why tiger come to the village. So give warning to the people in the village, you are doing the bad thing. So such kind of belief is common in all of Sumatra. So that's why maybe the reason why tiger is in the small island like Sumatra can stay until now. But yeah, however, nowadays the belief is reduced, maybe just for all people, and now the young people don't believe such kind of things. So that's the problem. So maybe I am why I'm asking that, maybe in the Indian tribe has some local wisdom like that, and believe and honor the jaguar, or yeah, such kind of thing.
They do, and you know, there's a lot of like traditional ecological knowledge that I think we can learn, and we really need to learn from these tribes. It's often seen as a warrior and as kind of a protector of the mountains, so it's really amazing. And particularly, a lot of the tribes came together to fight this big mine, the Rosemont Mine. And this would have been one of the largest. It was a Canadian mining company that wanted to come in and essentially take this entire mountain and turn it into an open pit mine. This would be one of the largest in all of North America to get copper. And it would have poisoned the water for many of these people forever, permanently. Many of these tribes. It would have, just absolutely been devastating for wildlife and for areas where there was a lot of endangered species. And so, we were able to get this video of this jaguar and then share that with the world, and the world cared. They said, you can't do this. You can't destroy the home of this one jaguar. And, it went viral. Hundreds of millions of people saw that. And it impacted the company to the point where that mine was suspended. I mean, the world said this can't happen, and the world was finally watching. And that mine was suspended. And, many of these tribal elders came out and said, this jaguar came to us just when we needed to protect this sacred mountain. Like, this jaguar did this, and that was really powerful. And I think that they're right. It's bigger than any one of us. It's bigger than just the jaguar. It's bigger than all of us. And I think as conservationists, sometimes we get discouraged. We're like fighting all these battles, and it seems like we're never winning. And it's important to, maintain hope, because this one jaguar helped save this entire mountain range. And it wasn't just the mountain. That mountain range is the corridor for all future jaguar recovery. If we had lost that mountain, we would never recover jaguars ever in Arizona, ever. And even if we wise up in 100 years from now, we couldn't do it. And so, it's so much more powerful than just that one cat. Than just, these, like, us as, researchers. It's so much more powerful than this. And, and I think we just need to, sometimes we need that hope to help us to keep going. That if we can get the world to care, we can stop these, this mine seems so much bigger than any one of us, and we couldn't have done it just working by ourselves, but we all collectively came together. And so when those, tribal elders said that, I think they're right. And they believe that jaguars come when they're needed. It seems like it's very similar to your tiger story. So, I think that there's a lesson that we can learn if we're just smart enough to listen to these big cats, for sure. Great point.
Okay. Any other question or comment from audience?
But Adrian, I have one
Yes.
question to Aletris. Sorry. Please.
Pak Bur. Pak Bur.
Aletris, is it okay? I have a question.
Many noise. Okay.
I didn't catch the question. Sorry.
Yeah, same noise. Okay, Pak Idris.
I want to know about the current situation of jaguar population in America. Would you give me some information related with this situation?
The number.
That we know of right now, it's just one cat. We only know of one individual.
Only one cat.
Yeah. So there was one cat, and he disappeared. Another cat came. He went back down to Mexico, got killed, and then another cat came. So right now, at this current moment, we only know of one individual jaguar in all of America. There was recently another jaguar just south of the border that was documented. And so we're hopeful that he's made his way into the United States. But right now we can only confirm that there's one individual jaguar in our entire country.
So that's why our topic title is The Last Jaguar in America.
Yeah. But I'm also not naive, and I know just like tigers and especially your clouded leopards, I mean, these cats are very difficult to detect. And so, it's we're looking for, like, there's a saying, and a needle in a haystack, and we're looking for a needle in, an entire like mountain range of haystacks. So it's very difficult to detect them. But right now, it's currently only one.
So other than jaguar, what is the biggest cat in United States?
So we have, fortunately, a very healthy population of pumas or mountain lions, puma concolor. So actually, within the range, there are some individual pumas that, are possibly even larger than this jaguar that's here. So even though they're not, the largest cat, jaguars are technically bigger. There are some very large pumas. And pumas are much more specialized. And so they typically feed mostly on deer. And so they're not these generalists. But we do have a healthy puma population as well in Arizona. So we are very fortunate. And there's a lot that we can learn from working on pumas, but when we started working on this, we thought about jaguars like pumas, and we thought, okay, if we put a camera, this is where we put a camera to get pumas, so this is where we'll put the camera to get jaguars, and we found that in most cases we were wrong. Jaguars and pumas use the environment really differently. They use landscape differently, and so. I think there's a lot of lessons there, when you're studying multiple species, that you have to recalibrate your brain with each species you're studying, and, not to make assumptions. And that's where our Scat Detection dog really enlightened us and opened up our eyes to how the jaguar was using the area, because no one had ever really examined jaguars in these northern parts of their range. And it's very different than some of the studying jaguars in like tropical jungles and places like that.
So puma is specialist, and jaguar is generalist, right?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there any different? Because top predator has a great function. Is there any different function, or which one is more important, generalist or specialist top predator?
Oh, good question. I think it's all about how those apex predators interact with the individuals there. And so I think of jaguars more, jaguars are much more of a dominant apex predator. We saw pumas, we saw other species avoiding jaguars. And so I think that their impact on the landscape is much different. This jaguar would roar and alert, and so when he's roaring, he's telling that entire mountain that he's there. And that's changing how those deer are behaving. It's changing how the peccaries, which are equivalent to your boar, are behaving. I mean, it's influencing that entire landscape just by that roar. And so I think of that similar to like how a tiger announces itself. And it could just be one animal, but everyone is wary because of that one animal. And so I think that as far as like an impact on like trophic cascades and trophic interactions within that ecosystem, I think jaguars have the potential to have a much greater impact than pumas do. But that's a great question. I think that we could.
Okay, we have just 12 minutes more. So, Dr. Wilson Novarino, are you with us?
Yep, Pak.
Yeah.
Hello, Aletris. Hello. I'm really sorry, Aletris. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry because
no problem.
I really wanted to join with you since this morning, but yesterday we already said that someone will to pick up our guest today, and it is possible for me to join with you since the beginning. But there is something happened that I must went to the airport to pick up our guest today, so I cannot join with you. I can hear your presentations, but I cannot get the space to talk to you. But at least, well, yeah, thank you very much for your time, Aletris. Nice to hear all of your presentation and your discuss before. Terima kasih banyak.
Yes, great, thank you. It's great to see you.
Actually, I would like to ask you regarding the our problem right now in Sumatra. There is many road construction that's proposed in Sumatra. Yeah, it is kind of as you already know before last time when you come to Sumatra, there is no highway in Sumatra. But recently, our government have to set up and also already develop some highway in Sumatra mainland. Will be from the north to the southern part of Sumatra. I'm not sure it is already discussed before, but what do you think about the road construction to the movement of our carnivore in Sumatra?
Yeah, it's such a roads are such a huge problem for wildlife, and there's so much great research that shows the greater the size of the road, the greater impact it has on like mortality, but also on limiting the genetic viability on both sides, and the greater barrier it forms for genetic diversity on both sides. And I think that's a huge problem for species that need to disperse these great distances like big cats, and I think that's something that's going to have to be looked at. I'm hoping that there's some potential in Sumatra to work with wildlife organizations and to possibly implement wildlife corridors and some overpasses or underpasses. I think there's so much research that's been done in the United States and Canada. There's just so much research that's been done around the world on looking at the effectiveness of these wildlife corridors, and some can be quite effective in these major highways. And so I'm hoping that there could potentially be some work there. I worked really closely for my master's project. I studied bears, and there was this big population, the last kind of large population of the Florida black bear in Florida, and it had this big protected area, this forest, the Ocala National Forest, and there was a road going through it. And it was just a 2-lane road, but it was going to be expanded to be 4 and even 6 lanes in some places. And we were able to accumulate all of the bear mortality data. So where bears were crossing, that I had radio collared, and also where bears were being hit, and use that to work with the Department of Transportation to incorporate corridors for bears. And it wasn't that they cared about bears, but we made the case that, look, if you hit a bear, and hopefully, if you hit a tiger or a tapir, which you love, if you hit these animals, odds are that those people are going to die, especially if they're going at a great speed, or if they hit a boar. And so, by making the case, and there's some, incredible economists that were able to look at just how much that costs, and because of like the backup of congestion, it costs people's lives, costs to repair these vehicles, that impacts with large animals costs, tremendous amount of money, not to mention the horrible loss of life for both animals and people. And so, there's this, if we can look at it from that perspective, we can often make these arguments that, hey, putting in these corridors will actually save you money in the long run. And so hopefully by, looking at it from that avenue and making those cases, maybe there's an opportunity here to make the best of a bad situation. But it's a really good question.
Yeah. We have already some discussions about that.
Okay, great.
Actually, the development of the highway in the several spots already adopt the green infrastructure mechanism, but there is in the several other place there is kind of the tunnel for the wildlife movement crossing the highway. But of course, it is also another possibility that maybe the hunter will have a nice spot for hunting actually. So I'm just curious to know, is that any other mechanism that's maybe possible for us to implement it when there is kind of the activity for the road construction like that. But yeah. Aletris, for our program, actually, we would like to share your experience and also the expert from the other continent to our students. So, because we would like we would like our students have a broader perspective in biology. As you already know before, there is not many students that involved like in the wildlife conservations in Sumatra. There are several students that work with the wildlife, but we need to improve the number of the students and also the quality and also the aspect of the study. Because there is many things that we still need to know about the wildlife ecology and conservation in Sumatra. So on behalf of Biology Department Andalas University, I would like to say thank you very much for your time to willing to share with us your experience in US. And also, I really hope that you still have a time to share with us in the near future, like as I mentioned before, for the November.
Yes.
Like that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, definitely, and thank you so much for this opportunity, Wilson. I mentioned in the beginning that your students were some of the most passionate and driven and motivated students I've ever met with anywhere in the world. So. I think you are such a phenomenal professor, and for all of his students out there, the faculty that got to meet with at Andalas University were just, I mean, so phenomenal and so motivated and so driven, and just committed to their students. So, please take anything you can away from this, because I think so many universities are getting tunnel vision and they're only looking at things from kind of one perspective, and I think you are looking at things from so many perspectives, from such a global perspective, and I think that's really the difference, and that's why your work is so special. So so thank you for this opportunity to share and to get to meet with some of your students. I really appreciate it.
Aletris, since there is kind of the technology and there is also opportunity to invite you from the other other part of this world, it is also possible for us to invite you maybe as a co-supervisor for our student.
Yes.
So maybe someone of our students would like to work with the carnivore, and we would like to invite you maybe as a co-supervisor, so you can supervise our student from the US. I think it is a good possibility if you like to supervise our students. What do you think about that?
That would be an honor. I would absolutely love to. I mean, your students are just so absolutely exceptional, and anything that I can help do to provide them with resources or information, I would love to do that, because it's the issues and the species you're dealing with are too important. So that would be a huge honor. Thank you very much. I would greatly appreciate that.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aletris. So I will offer to Pak Aat again. Pak Aat, please.
Okay. Now we are in the end of this lecture. Okay. Sorry. So we are in the end of the meeting now. So we are requesting closing statement from you, Aletris.
Oh, okay. Well, I just would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to talk with you, to thank the amazing researchers that I was able to talk with, particularly those of you working on tigers. You have your work cut out for you, and was really an honor to get to hear about your work. Please, if there's anything that I can help you with or contribute to, please don't hesitate to contact me directly. I think that Sumatra does hold a very special place in my heart. I fell in love with your island when I was there, and so anything I can do to help give back, and hopefully, thanks to Wilson's generous offer to hopefully help maybe co-advise some students and help with projects in the future. I really look forward to that possibility, and I think the more we can learn from each other, the more we can share and collaborate, the better off we all are. And so we just need to help and support each other in any way we can. And I just really thank you for listening, and thank you for thinking about this. And if you have ideas on what we can do to better protect jaguars, please don't hesitate to share those with me. I love thinking about these things from different perspectives. And so I'm sure you might have the solutions that would help unlock and save these species. So let's open up some dialogues and some conversations and see what we can do and how we can make the world a better place. So thank you for your time and your energy and all of your commitment to conservation. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. Please give applause to
Thank you very much, Aletris.
Thank you very much. Okay.
And then if you have another opportunities to come to Sumatra and join us to durian party again.
I would love a durian party. That's my dream. So hopefully one day we can all sit around and eat durian together and talk about how to save these incredible big cats. So one day I will come back to Sumatra, I promise, and I can't wait for that opportunity. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Aletris, and also thank you very much for all of attendance here, and very nice and very interesting talk today. So today is our second international guest lecture. So now next week, don't forget to join also, join again in next week for another stories from other continents. So, and thank you very much. And for me, I will close this lecture. Thank you very much, everybody. See you again.
Yes.
Okay.
Pleasure to meet you, Adrian. Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Aletris.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all of the